All right, what's this one?
G2.
So this looks like the French Famas, I think. Is that what that is?
Famas F1 top and G2 by. It is a Famas. Famas G2. Developed 1994 with NATO standards by accepting NATO magazines. Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool. Yeah, so this is a French Famas. I actually teach with a former French Marine. He's a beautiful man. Actually, when I first started working with him, I thought he moved to Los Angeles to model or something. I kept asking him, what are you doing here? And we were working security together. And he's like, security. No, dude, I know we're working security right now, but what are you here in LA for? He's like, security. Like, no, like what? He's a beautiful blonde man, like blue-eyed, like chiseled features. Like, he's not a huge guy, but he looks huge in his photos because he's so muscular, you know? But like, no, why are you here? He's like, security. He came to the United States to do security after being a French Marine. So the French Famas rifle is actually, from what I understand from French people that I've talked to that have used it, is a beloved rifle that's pretty reliable. They like the rifle quite a bit. But yeah, it's a cool bullpup rifle that's, you know, fairly modular and is combat proven and reliable. And it's definitely on my list, partially because it's hard to come by in the United States. There's not a lot of them out there. So I would love to have one and put it up on my wall.
Next. R5 RGP.
The RGP. So I'm not as familiar. Oh, you know what? Yes, I am. This is
No, that's the next one.
Oh, and this looks like a bullpup as well.
That's
okay.
That's the L85.
So let's backtrack. All right, so this kind of looks like an AR style. I'm not as familiar with this. You look at that handguard. That's the problem when you see like an AR profile. There's so many weird variants of them. So,
right. I mean, it's all over the place.
Yeah. One of the reasons they're doing the gas piston system is to make it more reliable in inclement weather and austere conditions, but also for running suppressors. Me personally, I wouldn't design a modern fighting weapon, be it for home defense or a battlefield weapon, without being able to run in conjunction with the suppressor. It just makes sense, man. You know, have you ever, when you guys were deployed, did you have the fancy Ear Pro at first? Because we didn't have them until near the end of our tour. Our first tour.
Oh yeah, we had Peltors. Yeah, really nice system.
The whole time. Yeah, that's good. Your body with fight or flight does like kind of shut things down a little bit. Like when you're in like, oh god, the moment, and like you have less hearing damage for the initial like full few trigger pulls. You can hear fine afterward. There's still a tiny bit of damage, but you can heal from it. And like there's something in your ears that kind of swells up and it protects your eardrums a little bit. But that only goes so far. So running suppressed helps with noise and communication, but more importantly, it helps mask your muzzle flash. And if you're ever fighting at night, man, especially with a short barreled rifle running a cartridge designed to run out of a 20-inch freaking barrel, you're letting everybody know exactly where you are, especially if you're on a rooftop or something. You want to draw a fire, you know, shoot at someone without your freaking suppressor attached, and you're going to draw a lot of fire. So that's, you know, a major reason for these piston guns designs.
Next. L85A2.
This is what replaced the Sterling. I've got a good friend that's in the British Air Force. He's a cool guy. You get to see him once a year at SHOT Show. And he works on these on a regular basis. And every Brit I've ever talked to hates these things. Absolutely hates them. They don't like them. They're not ergonomic. They don't trust the reliability with them. They're pretty ugly looking. Or I'll take a Famas, you know, any day of the week over this thing. And for sure, an AUG or even a Desert Tac, you know, a Tavor I would take over this. They're ugly. People don't like them. They have some issues. But it's funny that this replaced the Sterling. You know what I mean? This replaced their subgun. A lot of tier 1 units and special operation units in the British military are running AR-15 style rifles. They're not running AR-15s, people, but they're running like M4s or the 416s, you know, that basic style. I think they're trying to phase these out from everything that I hear about it. I haven't met someone that was issued one of these that likes it. Maybe they're out there. Someone leave, you know, let us know in the comments, but I would want one just to have one, just to be like, look at this POS. And the fact that I don't think there's very many of them at all in the United States, maybe a hand. Not a well-loved, from my understanding, military issue weapon.
Next.
Oh, the FAL, you know, the 2A community is a wonderful, funny community. And there's this phase where people would make fun of anybody that had a M14, which I want an M14. I want to have one. It's a piece of history. I'll probably be picking one up at some point with, you know, 18-inch barrel. But there's a lot of people that believe the United States should have adopted the FAL. And the FAL on paper, for the most part, is a far more reliable, robust weapon system. Now, there was an issue with running optics, kind of like the SCAR. It would really beat up optics, and there were some issues issues holding zeros, but modern ones you can hold a zero just fine. This is even a more superior weapon. This is the Setme, Spanish Setme or G3. This was designed in collaboration. Arms manufactured company and German HK company, they worked together to make that. The Belgian company, FN Verstal, came out with the FAL. The FAL is one of the most prolific battle rifles as well, issued to numerous countries, and up until recently it was unique because the FAL was one of the only rifles used by opposing forces in a war, which is it was issued to both militaries, so which is kind of wild. I mean, now like with the Russian-Ukraine conflict, you got AKs everywhere. Yeah, it's a very reliable weapon system. I definitely want one. This is on my short list of battle rifles to get. The magazines are plentiful. There's a bunch of different options and models out there. It's a cool weapon. Have you fired one before?
No, never fired an FAL. I know that one was prominently featured in the movie Heat. That's about all I know about the FAL.
Yeah, there was a bunch of cool, like Michael Mann's kind of a gun guy. There's a bunch of cool, weapon systems.
Yeah, I think Al Pacino was carrying one.
Yeah, Al Pacino was carrying a SIG 556 actually, or a SIG 555. It was a SIG, which no U.S. police units have been issued, but it is cool looking. But there is an FAL. I forget which character carries it. It's not Tom Sizemore. He's got a Galil.
De Niro?
It might be.
Or Val Kilmer.
De Niro's running a CR. Yeah, it might be Kilmer in the drive-in movie theater scene. Val Kilmer and Robert De Niro are carrying CAR-15s, CAR-15s in that famous bank heist scene. CZ805 Bren. I am a big fan of the Bren, the second version. The first version had some issues that were fixed with the second version. One of the cool things about it is the ability to run different magazines. So you can run the proprietary Rockin magazines that run kind of like an AK, but then you can also switch out the lower receiver and the magwell and then run your standard NATO Stanag mags. So it's a 5.56 gun, really reliable. Mostly have trigger time behind them running blanks on movie sets. This movie I did in Korea, which I think I might have mentioned in this video, everybody was running one except for me. I was running a CZ58. Right? It's funny, one of my buddies was like, kept having problems with it, and I looked at it, I'm like, hey, your extractor's broken, tell the armor. And the armor came up to me, he's like, extractor not broken, extractor gone. He's like, it's not there anymore. His English wasn't the best, but like, I only speak one language, so I'm not gonna. It was still running without an extractor. It would just have some issues. So, I mean, I think that's kind of a testament to its reliability. It's modular, it's cool, it's reliable. This is on my short list of modern sporting weapons modern sporting rifles that I want to get. And you could do a lot worse than getting a CZ Bren. If you're sick of AR-15s or everybody's got one, you want something different, but you can still roll with the boys and the gals, go get an 805 Bren. They're available here in the United States, and they're pretty cool. And you can see like him rock it in right there as opposed to like insert it. So yeah.
5.56 11 for XI.
I think, double check this for me, Izzy. I think this is Beretta's. I think this is Italian issue weapon system.
ARX 100 semi-automatic rifle.
Yeah, that's what it looks like to me.
Yeah, I think you're close, man.
To me, just because, it is a video game, this looks like the Beretta, was it the X100 or whatever? This looks like the Beretta's 5.56 battle rifle. With that buttstock there and the profile, that's what I would guess this to be. And it's a cool gun, and this is also one of the ones I want. It's reliable, it's neat, and there's not a lot of them out there. Not a lot of people realize that it's out there, but that's what this looks like to me 100%. So that's the thing with these video games. Sometimes, like once we were looking at something that was labeled an AK-47 and apparently it was an AK-74 and we got roasted for it.
Right.
Or sometimes they'll be like, oh, this looks like this. No, guys, don't you know the lore? I'm like, no, I just shoot them in real life. So, Mike Jones from Garand Thumb actually has a really cool video on this Beretta 5.56 rifle, and I believe that's what this is, and that's a cool video. Definitely go and check that out for some more information on it. But it's a cool, issued battle rifle. It's been, proven effective. So
right on. Next.
All right, the TAR-21. I wonder if this is the Tavor. Yep, I believe it is. What's cool about the Tavor is they've come out with multiple iterations. I would take a Steyr AUG over this, but I know people that swear by this weapon system and love it. One of the reasons it was developed is, the type of combat and warfare that a lot of Israelis are experiencing is more urban combat. So one of the reasons they went with the bullpup is you're able to get like a standard long rifle like this and bring it all the way back to right about here because all of the action and everything is back here. And so, and most people know that's what bullpups are for. Tavor is pretty reliable. There was some like control issues where you'd accidentally release the magazine or whatnot, and those have been adjusted. And the newest versions are very robust. They're even like smaller and more reliable.
Nice.
So
next.
SR3. Yeah, I know what this is. I believe this one also can run Helica magazines, if I'm not mistaken. Or maybe that was an earlier version. This is just another variant of a 9mm submachine gun built off the Kalashnikov pattern. So something I forgot to mention for one of the early, I think the first one we talked about was actually designed to run these really cool Helica magazines. And maybe I didn't mention it because I don't think I saw it in the clip they showed us. But yeah, they make these weird Helica magazines that hold a buttload of rounds. And it's often mistaken for like a grenade launcher underneath the barrel, which is kind of funny. Yeah, see the mags rocking there. Now that's a pretty chonky mag for like 9x39 is different than 9x19, so I wonder if that's like a different type of round. The Mark 48 is kind of a scaled up saw. Now I have issues with the Mark 48.
Okay, that's why I look familiar.
Yeah, so this shoots 7.62 NATO. The issue with it is this was more used by special operations community where you had more resources available to you so you could keep track of it, because this thing has a shelf life. The story behind it is you would just shoot it until you couldn't shoot it anymore. I don't mean in battle you'd run it, but like once it hit its like round count, you just get a new. Israelis make a very similar version, which I've fired, which I prefer. I have run this before, not in combat. I ran a saw, which is almost the same thing. Actually, there's a cool Call of Duty story. I was working for Call of Duty, and they gave me the Mark 18, or the Mark 48, I mean, and like it was directed by Guy Ritchie, and one of the cameras was just on me, and they wanted me to, it's unleashing like a wall of fire. We're using full load blanks, and how it works in Hollywood is you're not allowed to mess with the weapons unless you have the armor, and there's reasons for that, right? But I could tell the armor's assistant didn't load it properly, and he was a good dude. I knew him, but I was like, I'm still new to all this. I'm working on set with Guy Ritchie, and this is this crazy set, and like Robert Downey Jr.'s in this commercial. I'm like, oh my God, you know? So I don't want to mess with anything, but I've also run this exact weapon system in real life on a two-way range before, just in a different round. They were getting ready, the director's watching the monitor, the number one camera's just on me. They're like, yo, get some. So as soon as like I hear action, pull the trigger, and I hear the bolt slam forward and nothing happens, and you hear me go, get some. And in the making of video, you can catch me quick going like, huh? And they're saying just fake it. If it doesn't work, just fake it. I'm not faking a belt-fed 7.62 NATO machine gun. So I immediately drop to one knee. I open the feed tray. I pull the things out. I put them in properly. Put it down, crack it, pick it up, go, get some. And I hear, cut. I'm like, I'm about to get fired. I'm about to get fired. Hope it was worth it. And all of a sudden, I just hear the slow clap start. And then the whole set. And dude, we have overturned helicopters. It's like a football. It's on the back lot of Warner Brothers, right? I just hear this, and then everybody starts clapping, and then one of the tech advisor assistants goes, "That was the coolest thing I've ever seen!" And then that armor, this guy's name is Trey, instantly became my friend, and we've linked up on several of the projects since then. But anyways, in real life, I would take an Israeli version of this short-barreled belt-fed machine gun over this. If I have multiple resources, cool, I'll run this. But I prefer 7.62 NATO for this type of thing. If you look at the terrain he's in, if I was in Afghanistan, I'd be wanting to carry or something similar to that, I'd be wanting to carry a 7.62 NATO. The Stoner. So Eugene Stoner developed the AR-15, also made this Stoner weapon system, and it was super modular. You could have a rifle, you could have a magazine-fed machine gun, you could have a belt-fed machine gun just by changing out a few parts. This is something that's 100% on my list. It's a piece of history. Navy SEALs rocked these a lot in the Vietnam War, and they loved them. It was, for the time, pretty reliable and modular, and it was a shame it wasn't picked up more and used a bit more. But these things are legendary, man. Nice. So there are a lot of cool pictures. Definitely check out Ian from Forgotten Weapon. But like, there's just a ton of cool information and just the modularity. And when you look at it, it is very 70s, 80s looking, even though it was designed before then. It just has this like feel to it, this like stamped sheet metal, and it's such a dope weapon system. So you got the feed tray there. You got your little nut sack. You're throwing up the. These are carried by a lot of special operations units. I think primarily SEALs in the Vietnam War. They were still seen in some use, but they were starting to get phased out. That is a H&K machine gun that shoots 7.62 NATO.
Okay, HK.
This is a very reliable machine gun, very high-end machine gun, much more modern. This shoots 7.62 by 5.1, so it's a NATO. So I would take this over the Mark 48 any day of the week. It has a much longer, service life. So. All right, so we're familiar with this guy.
There we go. Now we're talking.
Nice Ranger stock on it. So when I was deployed, this was my first tour. This is what I carried for 18 months. Some people complain about them and reliability. I never had a problem with it, and I beat the crap out of mine. Now, keep in mind, I also did a lot of maintenance. I do want to own one of these in a full auto version. You can buy them as a civilian in semi-auto, so that's a thing. You gotta have all these crazy licenses and everything to run full auto. So someday when I'm a gazillionaire, maybe I'll do all that. There's no real need to right now. Own a machine gun, I mean. I thought they were reliable. When I was in Mississippi and we were getting trained up to go overseas, it was like 100% humidity every day. It rained almost every day. So I would, if we got a break, I would often clean it ahead of time and then clean it when I got home because there was always rust forming on mine when I got home. Overseas and in training and, all that fun, sexy jazz, I never had a problem with accuracy. I never once had a problem with reliability. I used to carry, depending upon the mission, anywhere between 1,200, 1,400 rounds. Often if we were running around in trucks and doing raids, I would carry 800 rounds and have an extra 2,000 in my pack. Great weapon system. I like it a lot. So, and the stocks, I like the original stock. We had some airborne stocks and you could kind of collapse them, but they weren't designed to be collapsed and run like that. You could, but I didn't like that. So the other saw gunner in my squad was a little bit smaller than me. I let him run the shorter barrel and that kind of stuff. Sometimes I'd run a short barrel. The newer Ranger stocks it's kind of like an M4, kind of like this. I like those a lot. Those are cool because then you can collapse it in when you're doing inside work versus standard infantry stuff. That was a cool weapon system. All right, so you know what this is.
This looks like...
This is that 7.62. Yep.
Okay.
Now also notice, Izzy, where the rounds are being loaded from. Most machine guns, most belt-fed machine guns are loaded from the left. This is loaded from the right. And this shoots that big honking 7.62 by 5.4 round. Yeah, this is one that I would love to have. A lot of contractors will use these because they're a little easier to get a hold of and they're very reliable. That ammunition is readily found overseas. You can still find tins of that stuff, all sealed up. You get your can opener out and open them up.
Type 95 looks like another bullpup. It looks like a Famas, but it's a bullpup.
So this is the modern issue Chinese battle rifle, and they're kind of weird looking. I mean, I want one because it's different. I'm not a bullpup guy. I want one because there's not a lot of them out there and stuff, but I'm not going to save my pennies to get one. I don't have a ton of information on this. I have no trigger time behind it, other than what I've heard about them and talking to people about them, what I've been paying attention to. I haven't heard of any major issues with them at all.
Is the charging handle on top or on the side?
I think it's on top. I think it's underneath the, we could see a side profile of it. So it has that thing on top and then the charging handle is like a little trigger underneath it that you pull back. So you could pull it back from either side.
Okay.
There we go. Yep, you see it's right in. Let's see him do this. Yeah, so I believe it's right there. It's right in the inner top thing. It looks kind of like a little upside down trigger that you can pull. All right, the M40 Sniper system.
All right, sniper action.
So snipers often used bolt guns because for the longest time, a bolt gun, less moving parts, which means not only can it be more reliable, but it's also, if there's less moving parts, it's easier to accurize everything. Since you don't have to worry about all these extra things going on, it's easier to make that, again, more accurate. There are semi-auto rifles that are almost, if not the same accuracy as a bolt action gun. I believe the new US Army sniper rifles that everybody's switching to are semi-auto, and there's clear advantages to that. What's interesting is running an M40 with an ACOG. Usually you'd have a much more powerful sight. Like the point of an ACOG is for speed and accuracy and reaching out. The way an ACOG was designed was that way you could run with both eyes open and you would superimpose that image. And it takes a little bit of configuring, but I love ACOGs. They're kind of more old school now, but they're battle proven. They're still really effective. They don't have the longest eye relief. So when he's down there running an ACOG, where that buttstock is, that cheek welt's way back here, you're not really going to see much of that. You got to be kind of close. That's the thing with prism sights. Prism sights are very durable and reliable because they're just big chunks of glass. It's hard to mess them up. You got to be kind of close to them. And so I don't think that's the best choice for an optic on this weapon system. Now, I'm not a sniper. I didn't go to sniper school. I gave that up to go to a different school, which was then canceled. So I'm not going to progress on how to shoot, 1,500 meters or whatnot. The longest I've ever shot was about 800 meters. That was just for fun. But I would not want to use an ACOG on a weapon system like this. All right, the Mark 14. This looks like an M14 that's been accurized. All right, so when I was deployed, I volunteered to go with this other unit, so we had like this mix of volunteers, and one of the volunteers that came with us was a Cav Scout. He carried an accurized M14. It wasn't the Mark 14. But yeah, the M14 is decent. What made it decent was like a much greater effective range with that 7.62 NATO round. Now, in order for it to be a DMR rifle, you'd have to then work the parts and everything to make it more accurate. And so that's one of the things that the Mark 14 is. It's a much more accurized battle rifle. Now, some people like, was it Mark Gordon or Andy Schuttgart? They were both snipers that were killed in the Mogadishu incident that selflessly went down, even though they were told they didn't have to. And they went up against all odds and they saved that pilot's life. But one of them was running an M14 and just preferred to because he liked having that bigger round. And one of the things they said was a lot of the Somali warlord type people, they would do this drug called CAP. It would get them all hyped up and it would take a lot of 5.56 rounds to put them down unless it was like super good placement, where that 7.62 NATO they were saying would drop them a lot more efficiently. So that's one of the reasons he carried that. So there's a couple different, like EBR is another version. There's a couple different versions of an accurized M14. So
Dragunov, baby.
Dragunov. So this is a notorious sniper rifle. I 100% want one of these. They're very hard to get just due to Russian import laws in the United States, where they wouldn't actually be that difficult to get. They're pretty accurate. It's not the same system as a AK. It's similar, but it's not the same thing at all. It's the system in it is much more accurate. And what's interesting about Russian snipers is they would use their snipers kind of similar to the way Western snipers were used, but they would also use them in more designated marksman style of fighting, which was fairly effective too. And I think we started to adopt some of those tactics a little bit more. They're expensive to get a hold of just because they're so rare over here and there's such a history behind them. They're darn good rifles. And again, we're shooting that 7.62x5.4 Russian round, which is just a big chunky round.
The M1891, okay.
It's weird that they're throwing all these ACOGs on these rifles. That makes no sense to me whatsoever.
Maybe, I'm sure there's a little bit of modification you can do within the game to maybe put some different scopes on. Maybe this is just like a basic scope.
Yeah, so this is, I believe, an accurized Mosin Nagant, which a lot of people, the first rifle they ever bought was a Mosin Nagant. And man, they release a fireball. So we're shooting 7.62x5.4 Russian. That is not a round you want to get hit with. Very accurate, very powerful round. I have some here because I was an idiot and I didn't mean to buy them. I meant to buy 7.62x5.1, so I bought some. So I'm looking for a good Mosin Nagant, but it's substantially larger than both 7.62 NATO and 30-06. It's even bigger than 30-06. Big boy round. Okay, the SR25. So an ACOG kind of makes sense on this. I'd want to have a more powerful optic. SR25, 7.62 NATO, semi-auto, DMR gun. You could use this for sniping as well. So these are a little more effective than the bolt guns in urban settings or settings where you might have to get up and move right away, so you don't have to carry a secondary rifle with you for that type of combat. Is it going to be as accurate as an M40?
Knight's Armament, Eugene Stoner, gotcha.
Yep. So. All right, Demo's crossbow. So I am a little familiar with crossbows. I hunt with a crossbow, or I have, because I'm still getting better with my recurve. Yeah, some people will be like, no, you can only hunt with a... Look, I want to eat meat. What's the difference if I shoot it with a rifle? In Wisconsin, for a while, you could only hunt with a crossbow with disabilities. Crossbows are super effective. Now, they are kind of loud. They're not like as loud as a rifle, but like I was sighting one in my parents' backyard, which I don't know if you're allowed to do or not. And it was like, choom. And they're not like, in The Walking Dead, what's his name uses the crossbow all the time, but you never see him reload. They take some oomph to reload. Often they have this guard thing up front. What that is for you to put your foot in so you can pull, get both hands behind it and pull that back. They actually make an AR-15 style crossbow, which I think we've talked about before, where it's just an AR-15 lower receiver, but it's a super powerful crossbow.
Whoa, the minigun, baby. Yeah.
Now, you had mentioned some of your team or teams you rolled with sometimes had miniguns mounted on Humvees.
Some of the teams in Iraq when I was there had them. We did not have them. We had the 50 cal on top of our Humvees, but some of them did.
Yeah, it's super effective. The Secret Service has these things too. They have these special, and they're made from Dillon Aero. I know some people at Dillon. It's a cool company that hires good people. These SUVs that run the minigun, they have this weird thing where you kind of can't tell. All of a sudden, the trapdoor opens up and this hydraulic system lifts up this gun and it goes... And you got some dude like with the Ray-Bans and the, just ready to go. I would not want to be in front of a 7, just that wall of fire that it puts out, it's just pretty intense. And the intimidation, plus that sound too. when whoever's on the other end of that hears that sound, it's like, oh crap, you know?
Yep.
All right, the frag grenade. Do you remember the first time you threw a grenade?
Yeah, it was in basic training. You had 2 of them. They had you hold them against your chest, upside down. And you would give one to the instructor. They'd be behind that concrete wall, and then he'd tell you and he'd pull, and then he'd throw, and he'd get down behind the wall. Couldn't even admire your own work.
No, and it was like the first time like the drill sergeants were nice to you, and like it was the first like the cadre was really nice. Like I remember, you're super tired, and like everything's kind of anticlimactic. Like the M16s we were issued weren't as loud and as sexy as in the movies. You know, they get that deep baritone, like in the movies and crap, and none of it was the same. It's still cool, but the hand grenades, and it's like 4 a.m, and you're all tired and still a little stressed out, and you're walking up and you hear the ground shake. That was a hand grenade because that dude didn't want to die.
Yeah, right.
It's interesting. You look at like the pineapple grenades where you could see the fragments on the outside. It looked like a pineapple, right? It had these chunks of metal. What they discovered is that if they invert that and put those chunks on the inside and have a smooth face on the outside, there's actually better dispersion of frag or fragments, the part that actually messes you up. So it's not so much the concussion. If you're close, the concussion, but it's really all of that fragmentation, that metal that's flying through the air that messes you up. So
Flashbang, I'm very familiar with. I threw these things all over. We would use these things for traffic control because we'd be rolling through Mosul and we'd be throwing them left and right to get people out of our way, to warn people we were coming, passing through. We owned the roads when we went through there.
We used them on occasion for raids. I've actually had more experience as a civilian with flashbangs training people. My poor buddy, I didn't realize he didn't have his ear pro on. I got a buddy that's a TAC P, my buddy Phil, and we teach together. We teach combat rifle class, but we were running students through a shoot house, and it was finally on for the missions. There was a night mission. Our students run it with white light, and I go to one of them, throw them up there in that window, because I knew my buddy Phil was in that window, and so they threw a flashbang up there, and over the radar, he started, and like, he already has kind of hard of hearing from, directing like aircraft to blow crap up. And I felt so bad because his ears were ringing for like 2 weeks after that. I'm like, why did you have your ear pro on, man? I felt so bad about that. So you can, I don't know if you still can, but you used to be able to buy flare guns at Walmart. Flares are cool, man. You can load all sorts of different flares. You can do star clusters. You can do like different types of smoke and stuff. Yeah, and you can mess somebody up with a flare gun too.
Yeah, they run pretty hot.
Where's the one where they shoot them in the mouth or whatever with a flare gun?
Oh, Dead Calm. Yeah, with Nicole Kidman and Billy Zane. Shoots them in the mouth at the end. Yeah,
you can buy, in the camping section. It's in like the boating section. You can buy flare guns at Walmart.
Drones are dangerous, man. Drones are a weapon of choice for a lot of people these days. They're being used in the current conflict in Ukraine.
There's a lot of civilian drones.
Yeah, you better watch out. All you got to do is have a little release.
There's a lot of civilian drones with like the
grenade. You get and then you fly it over. You have a little release. Cameron's got some stories about Syria. They'd be every time they'd hear that little buzzing, they'd get under shelter because there could be a grenade attached to that. And you can just buy them. You buy a drone anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's only a matter of time. Like as soon as like the U.S. started using drones, I'm like, it's only a matter of time before we have stuff, because everything like wealthy people or governments have, the people have later on. And with just the acceleration of technology, it's not far from now. Like I wrote a screenplay like 10 years ago about this like kind of vigilante dude, and he like, I made it in there. He hires like his Robin or whatever, who's like this tech whiz, like, I want you to make a drone killer. So literally like when this guy goes out to do stuff, he has drones flying that are just going to take out other drones. Mm-hmm. Like that is part of the future, unfortunately, and it's kind of scary. Hey folks, if you want to follow my adventures, you can check out Mav11B on Instagram.
Folks, if you want more amazing content like this, go over to Gamology's Facebook and YouTube page. Head on over to the Pop Culture Field Manual podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts, or on Patreon for stuff.